Ladies and gentlemen, House rules, please take note of the following. All translation headsets and receivers must remain on the table inside the plenary room. And now, from GFAR, we will introduce Mark Holderness.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to welcome you to the third Global Conference on Agriculture Research for Development, GCARD3. And what I can tell you is you should be smiling now because you're all on TV. This is now being webcast, so you can watch this event all around the world. So whatever you say reaches all around the world. It is a truly global event. And we hope also that people who are outside this building will input through the social media that are very active in this event. So we're live, we're on, the GCARD is now up and running. And it's my pleasure to tell you a little of how we've all come to be here at this third global conference. And the reason is that actually we're all part of a community. We are the ones who are concerned about shaping the future of agriculture, about working together to make the future that we wish to see for the world. And as this community, it's everyone. Look around you. Look at your neighbors. Do you know them? Probably not. Do you dislike them? I'm sure not. So why do we create walls and barriers between institutions, between partners, between sectors? This whole process of GCARD was set up to break down these barriers between national and international, between science and society, between public, private, civil, all these boxes that we create that are totally unnecessary and are actually counterproductive. So it's in us, as the community concerned about the future of agriculture, to change this. And that's what the GCARD process is all about. It's about breaking down these walls, recognizing that we all have a value, and that in that value, we all are experts. But none of us can do it alone. We have to work together to achieve the scale of impacts that we're looking for to meet these enormous sustainable development challenges that are facing us all. So let's look back a little bit, 2008. Those of you with long memories may remember that we had a food price crisis in 2008. And all of a sudden, the world woke up to agriculture. After decades of neglect, of underinvestment, of under-resourcing, of assuming that agriculture would just sort of be there and was okay. And that shook the whole system. Woke up the world that actually not only was agriculture important, agriculture and food prices could bring down governments. And that's why what we do is so important. It's fundamental to society. Food is fundamental. And so with all of that thinking came, okay, let's really reboot the system. Let's rethink how we work together, how we achieve what we need to achieve. And that came from both the national systems and the international system. The need for reform of the CGIAR was put right on the table at that time. To open it out, to link the centers more effectively, to connect them more effectively with the national processes and agendas, and to strengthen and transform national agricultural innovation systems to be more effective in development. It's not that anyone is doing bad things, it's that we can all do them better. And that means rethinking, working together to create a new future. And that's what the GCARD process is doing. Addressing these systemic challenges, the disconnects between the partners. And to do that, we've been quite revolutionary. It may seem strange now as tech moves on, but 8 years ago, electronic consultations were a novelty. The GCARD process was one of the first times that we reached out electronically to get feedback from thousands of people on what needed to be done. over 2,000 people inputted into that first GCARD process, both electronically, through regional meetings, through papers that were prepared, drawing together the issues, reviewing the issues, and then in Montpellier, where we had over 1,000 people came together to shape a new future and to look at how in the CGIAR, programs could get much bigger, much more impactful, much more integrated, and how in the national systems we could really change the game, get away from this under-resourced, under-investment into something that really is going to make a difference. And that resulted, all of those immense brainpower from farmers, from researchers, from the private sector, from governments, and so on, came to the roadmap. A unique document because it's been written by all of you and owned by all of you. And it's a common truth. It's common sense that we need to look better at the future and therefore design our research around what we see as the future needs. If we're looking at a 20-year lag phase from research to impact, we've got to be thinking now about what's happening in 20 years' time. It's about equitable partnership, recognizing that everyone has a voice. Get away from the linearity of research to user. Farmers are researchers. Change the dynamic. Put the farmers at the center of the process, at the center of our thinking, as partners, not as some laboratory animal at the end of the chain. Change the dynamic, rethink the system. We need better investment. We don't just need more investment, we need smarter investment that is actually empowering the producers to shape the research agenda, is linking public, private, and civil partnerships to get real impact, to work right along these innovation chains between what's produced in the field, what's used at the consumption end. We can't think of agriculture isolated from food. The food systems drive the agriculture. Consumption drives production. We need to really be opening out our thinking and get away from these single technology mantras. Think more about impacts. Think more about how do we then look at the desired impact and shape our partnerships and investments to achieve that. And that means new capacities all through the system, at every level. Farmer training, advisory services, education systems that are transformed to produce the innovation and entrepreneurial opportunities of tomorrow. And there's a huge emphasis on youth in this conference because the youth are the future. Many of us will be long retired by the time the technologies that are being developed now are through into practice. We have to be the ones who are inspiring youth, and these youth who needs to carry the program forward. And we need to embed our innovation in development processes. If there's no policy to support what we're doing, if there's no parallel investment in credit, in inputs, in land access, then the technologies will fail. And we need a much greater common mutual accountability in the system. We're all responsible for our piece of it, and we're all responsible together for making sure that ties together. So the roadmap has been picked up by the multi-stakeholder GFAR community. It's been picked up and accepted by the CGIAR consortium and by the regional bodies that bring together the national systems in each region. So we all know that it's there and it's right and it's things we need to be doing. And that's also helped shape the research programs of the CGIAR, the international research programs, through partner feedback. The CGIAR is becoming a listening organization, as we'll hear later from Kwesi, looking at how it fits with national systems and adds value to national agendas. It led on to processes like the G20 that shaped work on agriculture research for development, that led to initiatives on capacity development, for example. And it also led to new collective actions happening in education, in advisory services, in innovation systems, where people are actually really working together now to achieve the synergies, the value add of working together. 1 + 1 is more than 2. Second GCARD, we then went into the next phase. We've got the principles. Now we've come to, okay, what does it really mean in practice when we come down to thinking about key issues, looking at the future, getting a better view of foresight of what our desired future is, and therefore what technologies do we need to get to that desired future? What innovations? Not just productive technologies, social innovations. innovations along the market chain, innovations in new forms of financing. All of these are part of the innovation spectrum. We need the capacities. We need new forms of partnership. GCARD2 brought together a number of initiatives and said, well, how can we work together? Climate change was an example. We had great actions happening, for example, through the CCAFS program of the CGIAR, but also other things through the Global Research Alliance on greenhouse gases, others through the World Meteorological Organization. All of these coming together to say, okay, actually, we're all doing similar things. Let's get them to work better together. And that led directly into the strategy and results framework that is now setting the path for international research for the next 20 or so years. It also cross-linked those CRPs, the CGI research programs, to other big strategic actions, building and cementing those partnerships, driving towards impacts. And it also, in the GFAR community, the wide community of all of you, led to a whole range of collective actions in line with those principles. Just some examples of these. We've developed now collective advocacy for investment. We're talking at the highest policy levels with the G20, the G8, the FAO Committee on Agriculture about the chronic need for investment and better investment in this entire sector. And we all benefit from that. It's our collective voice that needs to be expressed. Not my institution needs more money, but this entire system is under-resourced, is not able to deliver the job it needs on the scale of investment it's getting. So we are speaking as a common voice into those processes. Innovation systems, capacities, all along those chains. There's now the Tropical Agriculture Platform bringing together actions in a concerted way with countries to strengthen their innovation systems. Protracted crises in 2012 was a nascent issue. It's now become the biggest political issue, certainly in Europe, certainly in North Africa and so on. These are huge issues. And what are they driven by at source? Poverty in the rural environments, lack of opportunity for young people, lack of future. Of course we have problems resulting from that. Of course we have social disruptions. And it's our job as those who are concerned about agriculture, about rural communities, to give them a new future, to give them new opportunity, new hope, new inspiration, not just in agriculture, but in all the associated industries that feed from the agricultural systems, the food industries, the service industries. If we don't create a viable future for the children of now, the problems of tomorrow will be even bigger than now. We need to rethink our agriculture, think about new metrics. To use the US as an example, the healthcare bill for non-communicable diseases, i.e. largely obesity and diabetes, is something like 3 times the value of the entire agricultural production of the US. Where are our metrics of the real costs, the real returns on these systems? We need to be thinking agriculture in a nutrition and food context and what that really means for the future of our planet and its sustainability. Open access. IT is opening out the world, as we know. We are now part of the world. There are new initiatives happening, driven through the G20 in that case, the Go Down initiative, that is really starting to use big data in a very exciting way that's going to transform the way all of us work. Foresight, working with communities for them to really take forward their own agendas. Gender, I was delighted to see Lindiwe's asking all the women to stand up and how many women were here. That's a big change from where we were 8 years ago, how many women are actively involved in these processes. We're not 50% yet, but we're heading that way. Climate change, the big challenge, the big issue that we're dealing with and that we're tinkering around the edges at the moment, to be frank. If we go above a 2-degree rise, we don't just lose particular varieties, we lose whole ecosystems. We lose coral reefs, we lose the ocean's fish. We have enormous challenges ahead of us. And it's our role in agriculture, which is responsible for something like 1/3 of greenhouse gas emissions between deforestation and agriculture, to really get to grips with these issues. On the negative side there, on the positive side, to produce technologies that will allow our systems to deal with changing climates. And thinking also about farmers as innovators. the rights of farmers as those who have generated technologies and innovations for years, and aligning that, meshing that in with the need also for intellectual property protection to ensure investment in research. We've got challenging issues here, but they're happening. So the first two GCARDs have really emphasized better futures, how we can drive towards better futures, engaging society directly in it, not thinking of science and society as two separate things. What we are in this room is the integration of science and society. We need to look at the capacities. We need better client-driven investment. Think of the client. Who is the client? Is it the taxpayer or the farmer? Who are we actually serving? Embedding research in development. We're only going to achieve impacts in development if we do that, if we get our research to really play a role within the wider development agenda. And empowering farmers, farmers as innovators, farmers as enterprise, entrepreneurs. All of this wonderful technologies and ideas that we're inspiring and producing are only going to benefit if they help lift people out of poverty. We have huge challenges to really make a difference. And with the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals that are now agreed, these things come right to the fore. We can't just think about more production alone. We need to think about these other dimensions. How are we going to eliminate poverty? How are we going to address gender needs? How are we going to provide new opportunity for youth? These are all part of the picture. And in the last year or so, as this GCARD3 process has run its first year, we have that new frame. We have a reformed Global Forum where everyone is now truly an equal partner. And I'm delighted to say yesterday the new charter was instituted, and thank you to all of you as the partners who were agreeing on that. That's a huge step forward. You're all now truly equal partners in shaping the future of agriculture. The CGIAR is developing its next phase. They were finished 3 or 4 days ago and submitted. Huge new research agenda across the entire international research system, setting out a very exciting path, I'm sure, to really make a difference. And that has meant also engaging, really engaging. We've had 20 national dialogues where the CGIAR has talked directly together, and I think for the first time, with national partners as to how do those agendas fit together. And Kwesi will be telling us something about that in a little while. And regional needs as well. We're common regional agendas. How do we get better investment to really happen? There was a really exciting meeting in Bangkok addressing just those issues for the Asia-Pacific region. How do we face those challenges together? And similarly, better foresight, again, that's a feature in this meeting, has been taken forward and developed in new processes in different regions. And so this event, this GCARD3 global event, is not a standalone event. It's part of a whole process of change. It's leading us forwards, and it's addressing now the key practical challenges. We know the theory, we know the principles, now we've got to put it all into practice. So in closing, our challenge, all of us today, is to really realize the potential of agricultural innovation, research and innovation systems, how they're going to deliver change in practice, what do we need to do, what are we prepared to commit to do to take that forward. And the declaration at the end of Friday is about our common agenda and what we're prepared to do specifically to be held accountable to in 3 years' time at the next GCARD event. Have we delivered? Have we lived up to our own promises? That's our challenge. So those themes that we're addressing in this conference are about ensuring better rural futures through people owning their own futures and working back from that to, therefore, what innovations do we need to bring to that to help to get to those futures. It's about the challenge of scaling up, which we all know. There are wonderful technologies out there on the shelf. How many of those are reaching beyond the pilot stage? How many of those are really impacting across millions of farmers? It's about showcasing results, but also demonstrating new forms of impacts, social impacts, environmental impacts, nutrition impacts that go well beyond food availability to who's benefiting from that food, who's able to make further income from that food. How are we going to sustain that food production system? I mean, if we're looking for strengthening of this sector, We're not going to convince the policymakers unless we've got that hard evidence and we're helping them to rethink their own systems and their own political agenda that's associated with this. And we know that we've got to look at the future. What is science about if not looking at the future? So keeping that science relevant to the contextual changes, the realities of the world, the rapid advances in technologies, that is really a very important piece. How we really get future smart, future ready. And last, but also first, how do we sustain farming as a business? We heard yesterday, farmers are the private sector. These labels become absurd. How many farmers are in it not to make a viable living out of it? They're driven by those needs. We have a huge responsibility to look not just at innovations and their value, but also how those get transformed into enterprise and opportunity, because that's what will make a huge difference in rural communities, in shaping their futures. So with that, I'll close here. That's, I hope, brought you all to the same page. Now we're ready for 3 days of full action, of you. This is not a classic conference. This is one mega workshop. This is one in which you are all involved. You are all part of the game. It's essential that you speak in your roundtables, from the floor, whatever, and have your say in shaping these processes, shaping the future, and bring your own commitments into this meeting. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to welcome you all here. And I'll now hand over to Kwesi Atta-Krah from the CGIAR to lead us into a little more detail about what's happened in these consultation processes leading us to this event. Thank you.
It's exciting where we are at this point in time, and I'm going to build upon the infectious passion that Mark Holderness has started with to take it over to let you get a sense of how we got to this point in terms of the GCARD3 process. Okay, first of all, let me say that Mark mentioned the fact that there have been a number of country consultations. I'd like us to look at the country consultations from two key respects. First of all, the country consultations were held as a very critical part of the GCARD3 process. Now, additional to the country consultations, we also made use of regional consultations. So you've got on this side with the country consultations, regional consultations, and now we are here in the global conference. So in the context of GCARD3, this is not just an event. It is a process that we have embarked upon, and a number of you have been part of different elements of this process. At the same time, the CGIAR has been going through a process of revamping the research framework, the research strategies, the research priorities. And one key element of that is the importance of site integration. In other words, where you have multiple CGIAR programs working with partners in a particular country or a particular location, that we come up with better plans of working together. So the site integration process. So at the same time, the country consultations were feeding into the GCARD3 and at the same time feeding into the CGIAR country consultation process. So why are these consultations necessary? Well, they are necessary for greater efficiency, effectiveness, and impact. I don't think I need to overstress that. But we could look at three key elements. First of all, they are important for getting inputs from across a section of R4D, Research for Development, actors, and stakeholders. So being able to source inputs, source perspectives, know what others are doing, all that is important in being able to develop an agenda that is owned by the collective. The second thing is about alignment. Aligning the research that is done by any research organization with the realities of national priorities. You can't develop your research agenda to help solve a particular problem in a country when you do not even know what is the strategic framework within which that nation has planned its work. So we thought it's important to have this consultation so that we can hear from the countries on some of the key elements of the national priority for rural development, for agriculture, for economic development, bringing all those elements together. And thirdly, also for coordinating delivery among the CGIAR entities in partnership with national stakeholders. We see this as an area where we need to do better. As you know, there are 15 CGIAR centers, and sometimes you have 9 of them operating in a particular location or a particular country. And we feel we really need to work better to show a sense of coordination, a sense of co-location, and a sense of collaboration as we work with partners in these various places. I mentioned that we had some regional consultations. Now, the strategy we used in the regional consultation was really not to organize our own regional event, but try to identify existing regional programs, and then we basically do piggybacking, tie the regional consultation of GCARD3 into it. And so we had a number of consultations there. We have one in the Middle East and North Africa, which was tied to the Milan Congress in Italy. We had one in the Asia Pacific. And shortly, when we have the panel session, we'll hear from someone who led that particular initiative, and that was in Bangkok, Thailand, built around the high-level policy dialogue on investment in agricultural research for development. So we sort of built upon that. One in the Central Asia and the Caucasus, which was held in Bishkek, and also built upon a Eurasian food security and nutrition network agenda. In Latin America, they decided to go online to do an online survey and an online questionnaire, which is currently being analyzed, but they really had a very broad questionnaire where they raised pertinent issues, and this is being analyzed. The Africa group is also, they decided to do their online assessment after this event because they want to build on some of the decisions that are made here and try to see how people are going to play out in terms of implementing them. So these regional consultations have been very important in the whole process, and they all help to shape what we're doing within GCARD3. Now let me say a few things about the country consultations and also about the site integration planning. We see this as a sustained mechanism for collaboration. It's not just one-off consultation events. We see them as a dialogue and an engagement with partners and stakeholders, which has to continue in the course of that second cycle operation that we're starting in 2017. As I've already said, it's also a good opportunity for aligning with the strategy and research framework, strategy and resource framework, the SRF, and also with the country strategies, and also to be able to have a streamlined policy engagement. That is very important, because in each country, you've got to be able to have a coordinated way of linking with the national structures, the national policy, the ministers of agriculture, ministers of environment, and we have to do that in a coordinated manner. So there were 20 countries, and these are not the only countries in which the CGIAR works. These are countries that have been selected as a start-off case to really demonstrate how working together in site integration can be beneficial. So those countries are also put into 2 levels. The first level, which we are calling Site Integration Plus, they were countries where we said, let's really focus a lot of effort to really demonstrate how things will work out. and all those countries had their first national consultations during 2015. And then there are these 14 other countries where consultations have also been held, and they will be continuing as we move ahead. Just to give you a sense of some of the early fruits that come out of those consultations, in Nigeria, for instance, the donor coordination platform was very excited about this. The donor coordination platform in Nigeria is led by YPARD, and they brought a team to this consultation and appreciated the initiative and the links with donor coordination initiative. So they really saw a very positive link there. Another example, in Malawi, after the country consultation, which was also attended by a number of donors, the coordinator of the site facilitation, the site integration, was now invited to join monthly meetings of the Donor Committee on Agriculture and Food Security so that they can be briefed continually on the progress that is being made. That is also something which is very positive, a very good indicator of what has come out of that. I'm sorry. In Ethiopia, this statement from Dr. Wokne Ayelo, Livestock Program Director of Agricultural Transformation Agency, is quite apt. He says, challenges still remain, but let us work together to demonstrate that agriculture is crucial for livelihoods. So generally, a lot of enthusiasm, but there were a lot of questions as well. It was recognized that having the first consultation meeting was just the tip of the iceberg. So what were some of these questions? Some of the questions were, what does site really imply? Are we talking just about field research site, or are we talking about a whole country? What does integration imply? Where is the emphasis? Is it about coordination? Is it about co-location? Is it about actual collaboration? What does it imply? So people wanted to know, where would resources come from? Because everybody said, look, getting people together, especially at the country level, it has cost. Where are the resources going to come from? And then there was a point about the need for a mechanism for financial contribution from all participating programs. Yeah, so some mechanism that programs can contribute to, and then a need for strong local coordination of oversight for selected key countries. So those were some of the questions that are raised, and probably when we get to the panel shortly, we might be able to get some of these points raised again. Now, these consultations were done in a GCARD manner, so we had representation from various groupings, and I just put on there some observations from a YPARD participant. I think this was the Nepal consultation. But these were some points from the YPARD. He said, links with media outreach need strengthening. The agricultural universities are not adequately involved in the consultations. Opportunities for engaging graduate students, and he felt that was not strong enough in the consultations. He says more needs to be done towards linking CGIAR research with extension and communication groups. Mentioned also gender representation was weak in relation to women and youth. And finally mentioned the strong diversity in involvement in country consultation site integration required. So making sure all these groups and other important groups were part of it. So this is really business in progress. So some key lessons that have been gleaned from across the various consultations is that if we're going to do site integration, significant coordination and facilitation is going to be necessary, a dedicated budget, mechanisms for engagement and communication, as we just saw from the YPARD comment. A very important point also had to do with preparations ahead of these consultations, so that you don't catch any organization cold, especially when you have been able to identify the principal stakeholders, some prior contact, visiting them, sharing these ideas before you draw them together into a big conference setting. Listen and learn was something that was very significant across a number of the consultations. Basically, they were saying we need to create space. We need to make specific effort to create space for all these stakeholders to tell us what they think, yeah? So that the CGIAR should not be the over-dominating voice, but the non-CGIAR parties really need to be in the driver's seat. And then a strong role for farmers association, women and youth, and private sector. The importance of a steering committee, and it was said that this steering committee would be better led by a country official, rather than being led by a CG, for instance. So basically, it's the tip of the iceberg, but we've made a very significant progress with all these 20 countries and all the 5 regional consultations that have been done. We think the challenges are there, but working together, I personally am convinced that this process has a huge potential. And as we look forward, we are going to see a great improvement in the way we work together and the way we achieve the impacts that we hope to achieve. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I'd like to call 4 people to the panel. Now, what these 4 people are going to do, they're going to help us place some flesh into what I have indicated here. And these 4, the first person I'm going to call is Dr. Regina Kapinga. Regina, can you come to the podium here? Regina, a Tanzania national, is currently with the International Institute for Tropical Agriculture as the head of advocacy and resource mobilization. She is also a focal person of the CGIAR site integration in Tanzania. Until February last year, she was based in Seattle, USA, as a senior program officer with the Agricultural Development Program of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. At the foundation, Regina was responsible for grant making and management in the roots, tubers, and bananas portfolio. So it's really exciting to have Regina join us. Regina, please take your seat in there. Thank you. The second person we're calling to the podium is Dr. Peter Carberry. Peter joined ICRISAT as Deputy Director General Research in January 2015. Prior to this appointment, he was a Chief Research Scientist in CSIRO Australia. His research expertise is in crop physiology and the development and application of farming systems simulation models, particularly the APSIM modeling framework. He is also actively involved in the development of the CGIAR research programs for the second phase functioning due to begin in January 2017. Peter, please. Can we appreciate Peter? Then I want to call Dr. Siboniso Moyo, a national of Zimbabwe, and she is the program leader for animal science for sustainable productivity, and also ILRI Director General's representative in Ethiopia. Siboniso is the Site Integration and CGIAR Country Collaboration Coordinator in Ethiopia. Between 2006 and 2014, she was ILRI's regional representative in Southern Africa with responsibilities to coordinate ILRI's activities in the region. She has 25 years experience conducting livestock research and development in developing countries. Let's welcome Bonnie Siboniso. Last but not the least, and one candidate who is representing the regional consultations, I'd like to invite Dr. Raghunath Godake. Dr. Godake has been a APARI Executive Secretary overseeing development of APARI's Vision 2030 and APARI's strategic plan towards strengthening agri-food research and innovation systems in Asia and the Pacific. He actually took this position only since 2015. He led the organization also of the high-level policy dialogue on investment in agricultural research and innovation. Earlier, Dr. Godake worked as farming systems economist at ICRISAT from 1976 to 1985. And he's also worked in Papua New Guinea, where for 16 years he was either a DG or a DDG in that process. And he has served as a member of CGIAR Fund Council and also as a GFAR Steering Committee and Chairman of Agric. Thank you very much, Raghunath. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do is to hear from the panelists. We're just going to give them the first, each of them takes about 3-4 minutes to share with us their general reflections on what has been presented here and trying to position it within the context of the consultations that they were part of. So just an opening, brief sharing, and we'll start with Regina.
Thank you so much. Yeah. It was a nice consultation. And before I even go into the details of how we did it, I want the consultation process in Tanzania, as related to what you have presented, really was a joint effort between the CG centers and the CRP representatives who are actively engaged in Tanzania, with key stakeholders in the ministries of agriculture and other ministries. And with that one, I really want to recognize the presence of one of the key steering committee member who worked closely with us to make this happen from the ministry, representing the permanent secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, Dr. Jackson Nkuba, wherever you are, please just wave to the people, and we thank you for all the support you provided from the office and the other key stakeholders. And I can't go through everything, but I want to talk about the alignment with the national priorities. For Tanzania, it was so unique. That month, December, was so good. Whoever has been following the news, that was the time when the new government was coming into place. By the way, do you know our new president? What is his name? Yeah, good. Whoever has got it, that is it. Yeah, so our new president came into place with a lot of reform, a lot of things. And that one also supported our work, and to some extent, by the time we were trying to do the consultation, that was the very time the nominations of key government officials was coming into place, and so the tension was quite high, to the extent that even getting a good representation to the round table meeting was a bit challenge, but we were happy because when we started the consultation process, before designing anything, at the design stage, you mentioned about the visits before anything, informing people what we were up to. That was quite good, because we visited all the permanent secretaries and all the key stakeholders, at least, who were seen to play this big role. And by the time we were having a national consultation meeting, it wasn't a CG role alone, but it was a joint effort. So that was quite good. So we are quite happy with that one. Mm-hmm. On the downsides, it is the conferences by that time, Dr. Magufuli, when he came into power, the first thing was to ban all huge conferences in big hotels. That one now made people to shy away to come because we were to listen to him. But still, we had to go on with this meeting. So that one also was a unique thing which we found was yeah. But again, and it was another opportunity because that was the very time the government was completing the development of the agricultural sector development program #2, phase 2. And so our consultation was so unique and very timely because when it comes to alignment, I was invited as a focal person to go and participate in the central designing team, whereby we were able to get all the national priorities and the key themes and where to work, and I shared it with all the CG centers and the CRPs so that in the design phase of any new activity, at least that should be reflected. And I think that has happened, and we are quite happy with that. Maybe I can continue later on. Yeah,
thank you very much, Regina. Excellent. So let's go to Peter. And Peter was involved in the India consultation. So Peter can give us a bit of reflection and then any snippets you might want to release.
Namaste, Kwesi, and good morning, everybody. I'm here representing the consultation process in India. Unfortunately, a number of the invited delegates to our consultation from India couldn't make it, so you'll have to have me. As we all know, India has a renowned and very strong national innovation system through the Indian Council for Agricultural Research, ICAR, the federal and state departments of agriculture and natural resource management, the multitude of Indian universities at the federal and state level, NGOs, private sector research, and of course the CGIAR and other international players. India has a very strong innovation system made up of multiple players. And ICAR, the Indian Council for Agricultural Research, does coordinate every year. There's an annual meeting between ICAR researchers and Deputy Director Generals and the Director General and each of the CGIAR centres. This year it was held on the 19th of January. And that meeting is about trying to coordinate what the CGIAR does in India. And of course, each CGIAR centre, ICRISAT and the other centres, meet individually with their partners on an annual basis. And that has happened also this year already to plan our collaboration. So this process, what did it add? Well, the communique at the end of the meeting recognised that this was the first multi-partner consultation the CGIAR had run in India. There were close to 100 delegates, 100 participants, and the day was split into discussion around each of the CRP programs, what was proposed in the new programs. That was in the morning, and in the afternoon, they broke up into states and brought that priority setting down to an individual state level. On reflection, we had over 100 participants, but we were missing, as Kwesi said, we were missing representations of farmer organisations, the private sector. It was very difficult to get good representation of all the states. India has, I should know how many, but it has a number of states, and getting representation down at the state level. And donors is another one that I noticed that we probably could have done better at. But there was some revelation as well. The extent of the CGIAR work in India is quite amazing. When we collated the information from each of the centres and CRPs, we could find over 300 research projects in operation at this point in time, operating in every state, with multiple centres operating in every state, up to 10 or 11 centres in some states, at least 5 centres or CRPs operating in some of the smaller states. So this first multi-partner consultation is a first step, and I look forward through the discussion to share with you some of the reflections and learnings as we go through this next session.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. So basically, the diverse complexity of the agricultural research and development framework in India, but also the diverse CGIAR presence in the country. So the two have to match somehow. So I think that's quite interesting. Okay, let's move on now to Bonnie. Bonnie was involved in the Ethiopia consultation. So let's hear from Bonnie.
Thank you very much, Kwesi. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to recognize a colleague from the Agricultural Transformation Agency of Ethiopia, SEPLE. She is the director for the gender program. There she is in the audience.
Oh, she's over there.
The Agricultural Transformation Agency played a key role in the organization of the national consultation. In Ethiopia, we have 11 CGIAR centers that are present there, and 2 others that have work in Ethiopia but are not based in the country. So when we came to the part of organizing for the national consultation, we really came together to embrace the objective of the national consultations. As you highlighted, Kwesi, in one of your slides, why the consultation? It's for efficiency, effectiveness, and impact. The 11 centers are already in the country. We are working with a number of national partners, as Peter said, they're doing in India, but we are working in different projects and different programs. We do meet on our own as CGIAR once a quarter to highlight our work and also discuss some administrative issues. So we really embraced the need to be more effective and also align our research to the national priorities. And the timing was great for Ethiopia in that the government had launched the Growth Transformation Plan 2 in September. So we were really in that momentum where there was a lot of excitement in the country. The country had a vision that had been recently set. The strategic direction was laid out. The priorities were clear. Agriculture and the manufacturing subsectors were highlighted. Furthermore, science, innovation, and especially technologies and biotechnology were also highlighted. So as the CGIAR, if we had not embraced that opportunity to engage, we were going to be irrelevant. So we really took on this agenda and came together with the Ethiopian Agricultural Research Institute, the Ethiopian Agricultural Transformation Agency, to prepare for the consultations. We went out on a listening side. We wanted to better understand what the national priorities were in order to better align. We also wanted to share with the different partners and stakeholders CGIAR's work in Ethiopia. We have been doing it as individual centers, but this was an opportunity to go out as a collective and share about our work. We also took this as an opportunity to explore and look for a platform where we could really engage. And in this meeting, we brought in one of the co-chairs, the donor co-chairs of the Rural Economy Development and Food Security Working Group to actually share with us, because they are a platform that has been convening meetings. So we wanted to learn from them how they are organizing all these different task forces and working groups. They also have a committee, a task force that looks into research and technology. So it was really an opportunity for us to engage. We had more than 70 participants in that meeting. It was in December, just before Christmas break. So a lot of people were looking at their flights for going home for Christmas, but we did have a good engagement. So the timing is a factor. Let's do it better next time. When you look at the wider stakeholder participation, we would have been better with more women and youth in the grouping, but we addressed that by continuing to engage. We have had focus group discussions with the various stakeholders that were not well represented in the first consultation. So in a nutshell, that's how we try to organize our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. That's a lot of interesting things happening in Ethiopia. lots of initiatives for coordination, various task forces, the agricultural transformation agenda, the country's strategic framework, and all that taken into account to try to build a cohesive whole. So that's a very good effort that has been made in that regard. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've listened to 3 cases from countries. We're now going to listen to Dr. Raghunath Gudake, who is the Executive Secretary of YPARD, to tell us what happened in the framework of the regional consultation that was organized in his location.
Thank you. Thank you, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, when we talked about, or when this particular opening session was remarked by Mark, he focused on investment. And investment is not in terms of funding, but partnership, institutions, networking, working together. So whether we have really enough or adequate investment happening in agriculture research and innovations, this was the issue. And I think GCARD Road Map highlighted it very categorically as strategic element of roadmap. At the same time, GFAR medium-term plan also highlighted importance of really equipping agriculture research and innovation systems. When we talk about systems, of course, we include not only research organizations or NARIs or NAROs or CG centers, but we talk about NGOs, civil society organizations, the private sector, the farmer organizations, and a number of others, including higher education, extension services. So how do we really look into this problem? So that was main consideration, but at the same time, we looked at what is happening in Asia and Pacific region, particularly through some stock taking and review of information. And we realized that, as per the recommendation, something like 2% of agriculture GDP should be or must be or need to be invested in agriculture research innovation systems. And this has been recommendation outstanding for long term. At the same time, some developed countries, they spent up to 6 to 8% of agriculture GDP on agriculture research and innovation systems. We looked at what is happening in Asia Pacific region, and on an average, it was 0.1 to 0.3%. That is the level of investment happening currently. And this is only in terms of monetary terms. But when we think about efficiency of this investment, how the prioritized research is addressed by this investment, that is altogether new issues and new concepts they are coming around. So we realize that this is key area that when we want to really be efficient in terms of research and then impact at scale, and how do we really measure it? So we made decision that we should be holding this kind of consultation in Asia Pacific region. And I think we provided that forum. Also, the other scenario is that when we talk about tomorrow's agriculture research and innovation system and transformation required to really meet the needs of future, then currently Asia Pacific region is spending something like $10 billion US per annum, total investment in agriculture research and partly innovations. But I think to be meeting the need in future, you will have to think about something like doubling of that amount within the next 5 years or so, 10 billion plus 10 billion, 20 billion. So when we looked at this scale of transformation and required investment, what we are currently doing is very meager. And from that perspective, we decided to hold this dialogue. This dialogue was, even though led by YPARD, it was co-organized by GFAR, Australian Center for International Agriculture Research, CG Center, International Food Policy Research Institute, the Department of Agriculture, Thailand, and it was participated by about 130 participants. At least 20 of them are present today in this particular gathering. And actually they included, again, as I said, NGOs and farmer groups and young people, young YPARD groups covering media and other things. So that was, we call it, it was successful in that sense that a number of issues were raised, they were recorded, there were a number of recommendations, quite positive recommendations, and then we designed way forward. And way forward is going to be a programmatic approach. There will be events and projects that can be combined over the next 4 to 5 years, so that systematically, this is just beginning, initial sensitization of people involved, including policymakers and NARIs and NAROs and NGOs. But I think the beginning has been made, but there are a number of events that we have to think about, including various projects like information databases, returns to research investment, innovations. These are the issues raised, and they need to be addressed in a systematic way. And I thought that this is quite a good area, particularly in this GCARD3, where you have got two specific themes, number 1 theme and number 2 theme. Both are highly relevant, actually starting from research and going to impact, and how to measure those things. So from that perspective, we have prepared a presentation, and that will be taken up again in theme 1. And we are thinking that, if it is successfully managed, possibly YPARD can, as an institution, with partnership with number of organizations, we should be able to develop a partnership proposal to be placed towards realizing sustainable development goals. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raghunath. This is very exciting. This is a really good opportunity of the role that GFAR can play. We're talking about site integration and focus pretty much on country issues. But there is a huge opportunity at what can be done within a regional context. And so this is a good example where GFAR and YPARD organize this meeting together, and then it is linked to the various processes that are going on within the different countries. So I think that gives us a very good opportunity moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope we have microphones somewhere, because I know some of you would have questions or commentaries that you might want to make. So I can see people standing with microphones. Shortly, I'll be coming to you. But before we do that, I still want to have one very brief contribution from the panelists, for them to really tell us, what do they really think were some of the key lessons or critical issues that came out from their respective domains, really key lessons, critical issues, or mega challenge that was faced, something that will help us as we move forward. So this time I'm going to start from Bonnie, and we'll have Peter, and then I'll come to Regina, and we'll go back again to Raghunath. So Bonnie, can you share with us some, few critical issues that you feel you would like to share?
Thank you, Kwesi. What came out in our national consultation was we all agreed that we really need to make this happen for the greater good for all of us. So we focused in one of our sessions on those critical factors that can make this collaboration work or the alignment work. So we looked at areas like, let's find ways of planning together. Let's plan together. Let's also find platforms that help us celebrate the successes of our work together. Let's also find mechanisms for monitoring and evaluating this alignment, the collaboration. So we then set ourselves, we set a smaller task force or a small group that is actually now collecting data to understand the current status, so that we are able to review in a few years' time whether we've made progress in some of these critical collaboration factors. So we all agreed this is something we are committed to. We would like to not to see it as a one-off event. We would like to continue.
Excellent. Thank you. I particularly like the point about celebrate together. Celebrate together. I think that is really crucial, because there has to be a way in which the benefits that come out of this are owned by everybody. So celebrating together is a really particular one, which I really like. Okay, so Peter?
Yeah, Kwesi, three learnings that came out of our consultation in India. The first I've already referenced is this relation between the national priorities and the implementation at the state level. So issues like research priorities can be set nationally, but the implementation, the investment, the development occurs at the state level. So this consultation realised there's some tension there and a process needed to be able to get that consultation correct. And that was recognised both from our partners, our Indian partners, and the CGIAR. That's the first. The second is some of the key priorities for India cannot be dealt with by a single CGIAR centre or a single CRP. Currently, there's a 4 million tonne annual production deficit in pulses in India. That's at the forefront of the Indian government's mind. It's not any one CRP that can partner in how you deal with improving or increasing pulse production in India. It's a multi-centre, multi-CRP issue. And so the consultation process realised and forced home to the CG that there has to be this process around getting integration, both in terms of the issues and within a country and site. And the third issue was that this is not just a consultation to learn from our partners about what the CGIAR can do in that country. India is a world leader in ICT developments. There is ICT developments happening in the public sector and particularly in the private sector. So ICT driving innovation around decision support systems, how to communicate with farmers. That learning can come from our partners, feed through the CGIAR and be delivered in our other mandate regions around the world. So really opportunity for connecting with our partners through this process and learning about what's where India leads, particularly around ICT, decision support systems, and passing that on to other sectors around the world.
Thank you, Peter. So basically, there are great capacities out there which would also enable us working within the CGIAR to be able to tap into those capacities and working together with the national entities to ensure that the impact that is desired by the country and the impact that is planned in the framework of the strategy and results framework, can come together very well. Yeah, thank you for that. Now let's go to Regina.
Thank you. The major issue which came out was the coordination. After presenting to the whole group, which had more than 75 people, we noted that it was noted both from our side and their side that there were a lot of activities taking place all over the country, either by the national teams or by ourselves, and so the need for coordination. And how was that going to happen? I can say it is more of like what Ethiopia came up with, was to have a whole group which is represented by different key actors. It was also noted that actually in the past, everyone thought the CG centers were just for agricultural research, like crops. But after presenting everything, it was noted that actually we have fish, we have water, we have natural resources, trees, and all that actually brought the complexity that this was not a matter of just one ministry. And at the end of the day, the group identified the place where everyone can be represented comfortably, and that was the governing body which exists, which is the Tanzania Commission for Science and Technology, which is an apex body which governs all work related to science and technology. And that's where they thought if we are to move forward with the CG centers in place, we should have a Tanzania Commission for Science and Technology host this group and have the ministries, more especially the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries, as well as the CG centers, all work together. And the Tanzania Commission for Science and Technology actually has this budget for National Fund for Advancement of Science and Technology, which could even do some resources with the good advocacy to support this group. That came out as number one. But also, since this work was all over and nobody knew who was doing what, Tanzania Commission for Science and Technology has this research the unit which registers most of the activities which are undertaken in the country, and it was compulsory that all activities which are undertaken by the CG centers and the national partners should find their way in this register book so that at government level, everybody knows where things are happening. That was quite critical and important, and we saw that happening. Yeah.
Wow, this is really exciting. You could see a lot of things beginning to shape up. But I believe as we move on, the big questions will be how it's all going to play out. I think this is really exciting that the country framework is creating space to enable the work that CG and partners are doing to be built into that same framework, so that everybody knows what is going on. Thank you very much, Regina. Now we'll listen to Raghunath. And those of you who want to raise questions, get your questions ready. And please make sure it is very specific, and you can address it to any of the panelists or even to myself. Raghunath?
Yeah, thank you. I think there are a number of messages and implications for way forward. But just to highlight 3 or 4, number one is the need for advocacy toolkit, including resource grouping, so that we can handle or address this new topic of investment, how to justify investment in agriculture research and innovations, ex ante and ex post. But there is methodological inventions required, because we are talking about transformation of agriculture research and innovation systems for agri-food systems and leading towards realizing sustainable development goals. So that means ex ante basis, how do we really analyze that, and how do we really convince people who are going to fund, whether it is public sector or private sector. So there is a need for advocacy toolkit to be established. That is number one. Number two is that I think number of times objective data, qualitative, quantitative data is not available with a lot of research and innovation systems. They themselves may not be convinced that how outcomes are linked to impacts. And this is yet another area that we need to really equip our research and innovation systems with knowledge, data, quantitative information, and cause or effect type of analysis. That is yet another need for us to have up-to-date data, information, etc. And we wish to translate that in terms of, for example, IFRI has got ASTI project. And we made a decision that we should be looking at that, whether that project can help us to not only to get information and information on continuous basis, but how we can use that information to convince policymakers and others in terms of what is the need for research investment, and without which what is likely to be implications. So that is number two. Number three is really capacity in innovations. Like people have got some idea about innovations, but they vary concepts of innovation from person to person. And whether there is standard capacity development projects. And I think TAP is currently implementing that sort of project, capacity development in agricultural innovation systems on pilot basis. But that is one area that possibly will help us in terms of specifying innovations and possibly enhancing innovative ways of agriculture development. Besides that, of course, then we need to also help small countries and small organizations, institutions in terms of planning towards development outcomes and impact basis. So how do we do that? And that requires also capacity inbuilt in the system at regional level or national level, or maybe developed countries, CG systems can help maybe developing countries. And that is very important area that we really figured out. And we decided that under our way forward, we will be implementing some actions towards these issues so that, it is just beginning. This was first event that we undertook. And I would say that this was the first event on global scale that, we did not have this kind of event before. So this was just beginning, and it may take maybe considerable period of time for all of us to work together and possibly design proper systems and possibly train, skill our national programs in this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raghunath. I believe the full report, because I know you have a report on that consultation, that a full report will get to GFAR, and then we'll be able to tease out some of these key issues in there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the time for you is now here. Basically, you may have some question or a comment you might want to make, and if I can see your hand, I would then, any people who might have questions to raise? Or a comment?
Behind.
We're talking about the importance of consultations. I see a hand at that end. Yes.
Hi, good morning, Kwesi colleagues. Thank you for this introduction. I'm Victor Comarel from CIMMYT Wheat, CGIAR research program on wheat. Very good to hear that in Tanzania, at least, there is commitment from the national side to fund an ongoing process of coordination. Because this doesn't come for free. It doesn't come for free on the national side, nor on the CGIAR center side. So very good news. The next question would be, when do we get to a point where we might align national investments with CGIAR type investments, as well as maybe investments from other sources such as YPARD or the World Bank when it comes to ag development? Thank you.
Just a quick question to the panel. Jethro Green from the Caribbean Farmers Network. I'm trying to gauge the degree of progress in incorporating farmers as equal research partners, and also building on indigenous knowledge as part of the research agenda. I'm trying to gauge the progress because that has been one of our concerns across the small farm sector for many years with the research organizations.
Okay, we had somebody here.
Thank you very much. My name is Yaram Andrepaya from Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria. I participated in the Nigeria site integration meeting, and I think it was a very great opportunity for the CGIAR to have thought of that. I say this because I'm privileged to have worked in the CGIAR as associate in IITA and also in ICRISAT before I joined the services of my country to work in the Agricultural Research Council. And over the years, I think it has been observable that even though we are CGIAR partners in the same country, more times than often, we've worked in parallel lines. The site integration meeting was a very good meeting that is thinking of bringing national partners together with the CGIAR system to have a common focus. For me, coming from the Agricultural Research Council, which coordinates research, national agricultural research in the country, it was particularly important to us because we have a national strategic plan in place where we think our country should be in the future in terms of agricultural research and development. And with the new government in place, coupled with the dwindling prices in international oil markets, we found it necessary to retrace our path back to agriculture as a source of economic support to the country. So this site integration meeting came at a very good time for us. And I'm glad to say that we were glad to participate, and we had very common understanding with the CGIAR, and we do hope that the observations made by the nationals at those meetings of the CGIAR's plan and work to integrate into the national priorities will actually be implemented. We look forward to the implementation with a very great enthusiasm. Thank you.
Thank you. I see one hand at the back there. Yes. Here. I will probably take one last one and then we'll come back here. Yes.
Thank you, Kwesi. Mafungoya from University of KwaZulu-Natal. I think one of the a small note is that this consultation will result in higher ownership of programs. We've never seen such kind of ownership before, and that this is good. The second comment I have is about universities. More often, people don't think universities are part of NAS. They are always taken as a sideline, but they are very critical in technology development, innovation, and more importantly, training the future generation of scientists. But more often we just hear, oh, by the way, universities also were concerned. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the very last one we give to Christian here.
Well, thank you, Kwesi. Christian Host, Agrinium from France. Just come back to the CG integrative process in the countries. I think it's a most welcome initiative. It should have been done a long time ago. Now the question is this, well, it's just by random or hazard that CG centers work in those countries. That doesn't make them priority countries. I'm not sure they were informed or requested or what are their involvement in that integration process, but I am sure they are welcoming that. But the question is, does that make them priorities for those countries and for the regions, the fact that you are working together in certain priority countries now?
Okay. I realize we didn't hear from any of our women candidates. So if there is a woman who wants to speak, I would allow one space for that. I already see a hand. Now I have a problem. Now I see it too.
Lydia.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
I will also thank the organizers for making it possible for us to be here and then listen to some of our voices. May I know whether the meetings that you had, were you able to invite some of our rural women who doesn't know so much, and we are always bringing them up to know what is going on? And what was their comment? What language did you use? Did they understand you? And if not, we think it should be local language before they will tell you what they'll be doing, and then they will sell their idea to you. So let us know some example of what happened in some of the countries. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last one in the front row, please.
Thank you. This is Uma Swaminathan from Self-Employed Women's Association, Ahmedabad, India. I just wanted to mention that we are working with 400,000 small and marginal women farmers in Gujarat. I'm proud to say that we are also participating with the ICRISAT, and also we are all recognized by the APARI to participate in the important event. What we are doing with the ICRISAT also, we are empowering the women farmers, training through increase their capacity building in terms of technology, and also we are requesting them to research their nutritious foods like millets. All those things. We have also developed a rural communication system using the radio, village radio, where the farmers can talk to each other and communicate the day-to-day information about the agriculture development in terms of prices, in terms of quality, whatever the relevant information to be need. Still, we are working with ICRISAT, and proud to be here, Mr. Peter, that he has presented very well about the Indian progress and status. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask the panelists to comment on some of these issues. But first, let me just say something about the last two presentations. The existence of a group such as yours, the women group that are already at the grassroots level, linking these groups to groups such as APARI, being part of the APARI framework, and also for the various site integration elements within that sub-region to be aware of that and create that links. I think that is something that we need to do much better of, and it will definitely be happening. And also the question from Lydia about whether rural women were there and what language were used, etc. Basically, I mean, the panelists would comment on that, but I would say the language that was used in most of these places was English. At the level at which it is now, it's really about getting the key stakeholder groups, including farmer groups, represented at those events. But it has to go beyond that. That first consultation is just the tip of the iceberg, as I said. The groups will need to think further to see how to make sure that these key stakeholder groups are also built in. And it's not all going to be done through this framework. There would be other frameworks being run by the regional organizations, the sub-regional organizations, even by some of the national entities in there. So what we had, one question was, when do we get to a point to align national investment with the CGIAR investment? Okay, so there's a point there about investment. At what point are we going to get where we can align those two types of investment? The second question there was talking about incorporating farmers as equal partners. To what extent are we doing that? And in our respective consultations, I've already heard some of you say that was a weakness, but how are we going to do that moving forward? Thirdly, we had a point from the participant from Nigeria referring to the Agricultural Research Council in Nigeria and the new national strategic plan that is put in place, and seeing that was more like a comment than a specific question. Universities was also raised to say, how are we dealing with universities? Are we seeing them really as part of the NARS in the broader framework? How have we engaged with them? And that's something that is very important. And then there was also the point about these 20 countries. Are we saying these are the priority countries? And that one I think I will take before I pass it on. These 20 countries should not necessarily be seen as priority countries. As I indicated when I was presenting, these are start-off countries where we have on the ground at the moment a number of CGIAR programs functioning. That was really the key criteria that was used to say, let's start somewhere. Let's show that working together we can achieve better. So we haven't gone through the analysis of saying, is country A more priority than country B? We haven't got to that point. It's just dealing with the reality on the ground as of now. So, I don't know which of you would want to kick us off. Okay, Regina, go ahead.
I will not address everything, but I will pick some
just
few.
Pick one or two.
Lydia, the representation of rural women farmers in this consultation wasn't there. But, no, they didn't participate as themselves, but they were represented by a group of organizations who deal directly with them. For Tanzania, actually, we have Mviwata. I will not put it I want to put it in my local language, my Swahili language. Muungano wa vikundi vya wakulima Tanzania. And that is how all groups are in there. But also we put into consideration, Agricultural Research Council for us in Tanzania actually has groups, is also representing the small groups of farmers, medium scale, and large farmers. So all the voices were there, and I must say that that was the first consultation, but as we go down, definitely we get them at that level. So that is what it is. Universities. The universities, we had them represented, at least those who are very much working in agriculture, natural resources, and we had them. So we had the Sokoine University of Agriculture is the biggest one, at least for Tanzania, but there are a few more who are coming in, like Nelson Mandela. All of them were present, and we are working closely together.
Thank you, Regina. Let's move to the next. Peter, can you make a, yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice to see a partner from India and hear about the work of a women's group in Gujarat around nutritious foods like millets. But it does raise the point about when we're talking about consultation, how do you do that to the multitudes of stakeholders that are involved in a country like India or many other countries? And so that's a challenge, and it comes back to Victor's first point around resourcing as well. How much effort, how much resources are available to enable us, the CGIAR, to connect with our partners and for our partners to connect with us. That still has to be worked out and is somewhat unresolved in this process so far.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Bonnie?
I would like to pick on the point of universities and other training centers. We did, in Ethiopia, try to bring in the national or the federal level universities, and we did have representation. But we also realized that there are universities at the regional level. So in our continuous process, we have started already engaging with the universities through the CRP, the different CRP national consultation processes. We recognize that the universities are important in this process, and we have tried our best to involve them. And we'll continue to do that through special focus group discussions, or at the next national consultation, we should plan way in advance and try and get a better representation from the regional level.
Thank you, Bonnie. And to Raghunath?
I can pick up maybe a couple of points. I think one thing is about higher education sector. In fact, this is underutilized sector in the terms of their capacity and skills. Currently, being utilized apart from education, particularly in research and extension and innovations. So that is highly underutilized capacity. And that needs to be explored. And I think from that angle, particularly at APARI level, higher education has been given primary role, and then we want really that particular constituency to be expanded region-wise. So that's number one, so that they can also come in mainstream research and innovation systems. At the same time, women and youth and other neglected, even small countries, that should be also our focus in terms of when we are thinking about a particular issue, not only investment, but partnership or initiating different programs, new programs towards development. They also have big potential in terms of contribution, and that also needs to be explored too. Thank you. I think a couple of points.
Thank you very much. I realized there was one question that was so tough, nobody wanted to touch it. This is the thing about how do we get to a point to align national investment with the CG investment. I think we are in a process which has just begun. And this is a very important goal to hope for, that there will be more and more integration at that level of investment. So it's still work in progress, and it's a very important point. And relating that to the APARI workshop, which focused on investment issues. I think investment has to be something that we really take seriously and work moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, we are coming to the end of this session. And just to save time, I was going to ask each of them to tell us moving forward. But let me tell you, so that, in terms of saving time, each of these consultations has put in place a steering committee. And in almost all cases, the steering committee is placed within the national policy framework, and it's led by a person, a senior official of the ministry or of the lead agricultural research institution, with key representation from a number of areas. So that steering committee is really vital. The second thing is that this steering committee, each location, they are developing what is called a site integration plan. This plan is to address some of the questions and some of the issues that have been raised. Basically, moving forward, how are we going to make it work? How are we going to monitor the partnership, the alignment issues, etc., So these steering committees will be working together with the general membership to be able to develop these things. And finally, I would like to say that we are excited about this initiative. Somebody said this should have started a long way back. Well, it's never too late, especially when we are on such a positive terrain. So we are going to do everything that we can to strengthen the links, to strengthen the partnership links, and the involvement of the key stakeholders as we move towards achieving the targets that have been set, both within the national strategic plans, but also within the strategy and results framework that has been set up by the CGIAR, which is pretty much in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to join me in thanking our 4 panelists for an excellent sharing. So let's give them a warm applause for what they have done for you. Yeah. And thank you all very much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Mr. Jim Cano.
Good morning. Today I am reminded of a quote, actually, of a world changer with this event. And I thank GFAR, YPARD, and all the organizers, even the host, the ARC, for organizing this event and also putting a special importance to young people. And what this quote is a simple quote from Mahatma Gandhi: be the change you want to see in the world. And as much as possible, I want to do away with the text and the PowerPoint so we could just join the conversation amongst us. And really, given this opportunity for young people to be involved is already a way forward, is already a great leap for GCARD and for the global stakeholders in agriculture. But before that, let me acknowledge some of the young people who are involved in this process. I'd like to call out our YPARD Global Director, Courtney, if she's in the room. If she's in the room, yeah, wave at me. And Marina from the GCARD Communications Task Force, also part of YPARD Global. We have Michelle, the mentoring coordinator of the YAP. Yeah, wave at me, yeah. And we have fellow young people in the plenary who will be speaking. And we had also young people at the Partners Assembly. And we have the YAP finalists. And we have the social media people, the social media reporters. Where are you guys at? Okay. All right, everybody see that there are young people here. And this is the first time I've seen actually a really huge youth delegation wherein they're not just at the back of the room and reporting and not giving their inputs, but really mainstreaming them into the whole process of the GCARD. And thank you to the organizers for that. YPARD is also on its 10th year anniversary. And so if you want to check us out, there's a booth outside. But let me go straight that many of us already know. Statistics, publication, research, and all these have shown that average age of farmers is at 50 to 60 years old. And the question lies, how do we connect this to the figure that is being projected that we will have 9 billion people by 2050 without land increasing, with sea levels increasing? How do we address this? And it leads us to these questions such as, who will grow our food? Who will determine future agriculture? And where are the youth? Where are the rural youth? And if the youth are already in the organizations and agencies, are they given roles where they can influence agricultural development? Let me share a story of how one of my professors had a project back in the Philippines in a small town. and she had a project on livestock farming. And it's the usual story where the farmer's taken a technology, adopt it, and they were successful. But years after the project, she goes back to the site. And what's sad is that some of the farmers have stopped farming because they've been disabled already by health or sickness, and some of them had passed away. But the question was, who was taking up their place? And there was none, because most of their kids had migrated to the urban areas for greener pastures. And how do we address this? How do we get the youth back interested into the agricultural sector? How do we get the youth back into farming? We can show them opportunities that they can earn and change society through agriculture. Another thing I've observed and seen in organizations, actually, and this was also pointed out to me by a senior professional in one conference, is that most of the time, organizations get young people to fill a job vacancy. And it's not really with the intention that we want to build and grow young people to become the influencers of future agriculture. This may not be applicable to all, but it can be an issue. And so, how do we address this? I would say that we would have dedicated career programs, dedicated career pathways, where young people can get into the organization and they're really nurtured. They're not just transplanted. They're not just balled into the organization, but they are grown and nurtured, you could say, from the seedling stage and up to the maturity stage. How do we get them to influence key decision-making processes? And this is the part where we can also ask ourselves, should we wait for the young professionals to reach a senior age before we give them a role to influence decisions? From these 2 points, I want to raise a mode of action, or propose or present 2 modes of action. And one is that it's a simple top-down and bottom-up approach that you would mix. There has to be a two-way reaching out in developing young people, in including young people in the agricultural sector. One is from the bottom-up approach. And as we can see, there are grassroots campaigns, grassroots level foresight, grassroots foresight. And these are the programs where we can get young people to really get to see the value of agriculture, to promote the business of farming, that with the advancement of technology, the advancement of research, that they can use all these plethora of information to farm smarter and earn better. And in that way, we can also address the issue of youth unemployment in highly urbanized areas and bring them back to the rural areas and say there is an opportunity for agriculture in the rural areas. You don't have to sit around in the highly urbanized area and think what you're going to do with your life. That is for the bottom-up approach. As for the top-down approach, my view is that, and I believe all of us understand, that agriculture is a highly political sector. Yes? Highly political sector, and the young people, some of us are kind of intimidated, discouraged at how the reality is. But this is an opportunity as well, where the senior professionals can provide an environment for young people to grow and see that they can influence also policy formulation, policy discussions, policy debates in agriculture. We have to address that young people can also be politically streamlined in. They have to be included in regional fora, national fora, in the organizations, and how they can move forward together with young people. And not just putting young people just so that they can be heard and say that we've included young people in the discussion, but really having the intention, then seeing the value that young people can give significant contribution. This is what I'm passionate about, the bottom-up and the top-down approach, and really building that critical mass from the grassroots level and mixing it with a top-down where we have young champions established in key decision level making processes. To fellow young colleagues, Many of us are pursuing graduate studies and research. And yes, research is important. Developing technologies is awesome. And doing a lot of these things are actually noble. But my heart really goes out that we have to have a goal that our research or our studies have to have an impact. That it's not just publish, 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 research, 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 but really translating it into flesh, translating it into impact, seeing that young people, that women, that youth, that even marginalized sectors are really thought about and brought into the discussions such as this, that we have a big role to play in. In one conference I attended, the Asian Irrigation Forum, a senior professor actually told me something that stuck with me. And she said that the youth need to redirect their focus from degrees and jobs to knowledge and learning. And yes, that is true. And I would like to modify the last phrase, that we should move and redirect from knowledge to learning to create lasting transformations. And just like how I proposed a bottom-up and top-down approach, which is a simple model actually, it's equally important for all of us to understand that there needs to be a synergy between two generations, that the young people have to understand that they cannot work and survive without the wisdom and the experience of the senior professionals. And in the same way, the senior professionals have to understand that they cannot move forward, that their research cannot move forward, and their efforts would be in vain if the youth are not included. We have to understand that young people have the passion and creativity, and we're just waiting to latch onto something that we can really live for and die for, if you would call it. And we have to see that the older generation's ceiling are the young people's platform. This is very true, and if we just grasp that simple truth, we can change a lot, and we can continue the way forward in a better way. The second mode of action is actually a model or a kind of line of thinking that we've developed in YPARD Philippines. And it's basically to address influential sectors for agricultural development. And if we see, this is the way we see it, that we have to get young people built in capacity in these 5 sectors. In the academe, the research, policy, and business. The farmer organizations, the civil society organizations will always fall in either place, and so it's a cross-cutting. But these 5 specific sectors are the sectors we've aimed for to build capacity in young people. Why the academe? The academe has a crucial role, and all of us know that, in knowledge transfer, knowledge development, and really what we aim for is that professors do not just transfer the theory from the 60s and 70s to the millennials who are oblivious to what is the reality in agriculture, but really to push the young people to think out of the box, to think critically on how to solve problems that are complex, to force or encourage young people to dream that they are not just robots in agriculture, but they are human beings that they can dream for change in agriculture. The research and development is a place in an environment where young people can express their innovation, their creativity. And this is where we want young people to also grow in, where all these creative ideas, all these innovative models would be expressed through their research, leading to impact, leading to development, always leading to development. The next one is extension, and I cannot emphasize this more, because even in Bangkok, I was raising this in the roundtable discussions, that I've seen so many research, and I've gone through research in libraries, just in the Philippines, in our university, that there are research with potential to change countries, but are sitting in the shelves and collecting dust. And so what are we doing with this? And extension is equally important as to research, because our research is of no significance if it just sits in the shelves. And I'd like to acknowledge GFAR's initiative to really go with the social media with building capacity among young people and among stakeholders in using social media to let our research go in a wider level, to reach a wider participation, wider audience. This actually lets us achieve a wider range of impact. Agribusiness, we have people who have business ideas that can change the world, especially in the young people. If you just know how many proposals came in when the call for proposals came out with a YAP, the Young Agripreneurs Program, there were 426 ideas that came in that were being sent for application. We have 6 YAP finalists here. And if you want to know about it, you can ask them. You can look for these young people around the conference. But this shows us that young people have ideas, just waiting for an opportunity to really flesh it out. And they're looking for mentors. And if you're a mentor, and if you're a senior professional who wants to mentor these young people, I would encourage you to approach our finalists, our YAP finalists, and really pour in your wisdom, pour in your technical expertise and knowledge to build the passion, build on that passion of young people. As for policy, like what I said, is highly political. And these decision-making processes normally are at the top level. Government leaders and agencies define what are the priorities for a national or a regional agricultural system. But we have friends, like in the Philippines, we have colleagues from our university who are now working in the government, and this is what we try to aim for, that we get these young people in our spheres of influence and really build their capacity. Even the simple teaching them how just to be outspoken, because most of the time, young people can be timid in a high level environment and say, okay, I don't have enough experience and my word and my opinion might not matter. But we really want to build capacity and encourage young people that your voice matters, especially in the agricultural policy sector, where policy debates, policy formulation, we have to get involved in that. And these actions, if you look at all these 5, is actually simple. The steps that we need to take are simple and small, but small is big. A small stone in a lake can make a lot of ripples. And so is the same action if we take it into account into our very own organizations, into the CGIAR, into the programs, into the national priorities in agriculture, in the strategic framework of countries. Small is big. These small actions can have big impacts in society. And with these 5, I'd like to show just briefly some of examples from YPARD Asia Pacific and YPARD Philippines that we can correlate to these. One is the Edumala Mentoring Program of YPARD Nepal. And if you want to know more, you can check edumala.com. But this is an online mentoring program that young people from Nepal have organized themselves into doing, where they came up with modules, and it's free. They just want to build capacity in fellow young colleagues, young professionals. And this shows us that young people want to build a community where they can help each other and change and transfer knowledge, transfer whatever they have to each other so that they can collectively change agriculture. The next example is the eco-friendly village of YPARD Iran, and I'd like to acknowledge the YPARD Iran representative, Reza. If you can please stand up so that if people want to ask more about it, they can go to you. Where is Reza? Right there. Reza's there towards that side. So if you want to know more about this model, and it's really like, for me, it's like a research and development where they have rural residences mixed with farms. And you can know more about the model. You can talk to the guy himself during the break. In YPARD Philippines, what we've done also is we've connected to a group called the New Wave Farmers. And if you see this, These are actually young people who want to go back into farming and are passionate about going back into the business of organic farming. And they call themselves New Wave for the simple reason that there was a genre of music called New Wave in the 80s. I think most of you guys would probably know about it. And these young people said that, let's call ourselves New Wave because we were born in that era. We were born in the 80s. And so they've called themselves the New Wave Farmers, and they've actually even presented their model in Istanbul in a certain organic conference, and they actually won a certain prize. But these are young people who are wanting to go back into farming, and we support their efforts to really get young people back to the farms. Also in the Philippines, we've started joining strategic consultations and high-level decision processes where we have representatives from the national agencies in agriculture and even other organizations. But this is headed by Dr. William Dar, the former director of ICRISAT. He has a movement called Inang Lupa Movement. And we've joined in that. We're joining in that presentation, in that consultation, and really wanting to get youth to participate and introduce those ideas that can shape agriculture. And my PowerPoint is out. But we have another effort also. YPARD Philippines joined the Bangkok training with Dr. Godake, with Apari in December, and we joined the social media training. And we've actually brought that back to the Philippines and really taught people in the scientific community on how to use social media to widen their reach from the scientific community and really bring the public goods to the public. So those are some of our examples from YPARD Asia Pacific and the Philippines. And those are two simple models that I'd like to present. And to wrap up, where do we want to see young people in the next 3 to 5 years? The way I see it is, we can replicate what is happening in the GCARD process, where young people are given key roles to be involved, get the youth involved, to see that young people are sitting in high-level discussions, contributing to high-level decision-making in policy formulation, coming up with the programs. And this is what we want to see in the next 3 to 5 years. Young professionals are not only an accessory, they are a necessity. And I hope we have that perspective, that we don't just dangle the youth into our research programs just to say that we are youth-oriented, but really include the youth. Include the youth intentionally and deliberately. To the senior professionals, I hope that you would develop, or you would pour in that wisdom and experience into the young people, because we are just waiting to see and to experience and learn and know how we can move farther and go together farther. Young professionals, let us value the work of the senior professionals. Let us honor their work. And let us understand that we cannot go forward without understanding the past, without understanding the present. That we cannot change nations, we cannot change the agricultural sector without honoring what has been done in the past. Let me close with this quote. Young people should be at the forefront of global change and innovation. Empowered, they can be key agents for development and peace. If, however, they are left on society's margins, all of us will be impoverished. Let us ensure that all young people have every opportunity to participate fully in the lives of their societies. Let me repeat the last one. Let us ensure that all young people have every opportunity to participate fully in the lives of their societies. This is a quote by Kofi Annan, former UN Secretary General. Fellow GCARD3 delegates, let us break the barriers and close the gap between two generations to achieve a sustainable future. Good morning.
and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Dimakatso Sekhoto.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very, very honored to be standing here in front of all of you. And I would like to thank the GCARD organization for inviting me and actually giving me this opportunity. When I've been listening to all the presentations coming up before me, it's been interesting because there's a same theme carried on from each speaker to another. And for me, it makes my life a little bit easier in terms of the presentation that I'm going to give, because it actually refers to a lot of the stuff that has already been spoken about. Food security being one of them. Food security has become an important topic across the world, especially with the anticipation of the growing population. Here in Africa, the conversation is more glaringly obvious, and even a bit of an uncomfortable one at times, as poverty breeds food-insecure communities, where we see images of starving people across the continent and children dying from starvation. These are images that are vivid to all of us across the world. Combating hunger, world hunger, and achieving food security has been a struggle that the world has not yet overcome. And if we're even to ever imagine a food-secure world in the future, something needs to be done right now and very fast. Who am I to speak about world hunger and food security? What do I really know? I'm just a young female who's just got into the agriculture sector, trying to figure out what's going on, where I can, play my part. So what gives me the right to stand up here and to speak about food security and world hunger in front of all you delegates from across the world, especially in the research community, who know far more than I do? But I believe that I actually do have an answer for that. As we've all noted, I'm youth, and I am the future of this country, this continent, and indeed, the world. Ladies and gentlemen, as you've been told, my name is Dimakatso Sekhoto. To those who know me, you can call me Nono. And I'm here to share with you my experience as an emerging Black young commercial farmer in South Africa. Just to give you a bit of a background, I actually started as in the financial services industry. So I was never, ever going to really be a farmer. I knew nothing about farming, and there was nothing, I had no prospect of ever becoming a farmer. So when I started realizing that in the industry where I was at, I felt just like one of the blobs. I wasn't making much of a difference. What was important for me was to find a bigger challenge, a bigger adventure. And I wanted to actually participate in the, contribute in the change that was happening in our country. Luckily for me, I got the opportunity of a lifetime when I actually joined my father at our commercial farm in 2011. This gave me the opportunity to learn a variety of things. As you can see, I looked at actually the management of the business, as my background was in finance. This allowed me to get into dairy, understanding how to manage sheep, crop in terms of maize and plant and sunflower, an apple orchard, and in beef cattle. So for the average farmer in South Africa, this is typically what we actually are exposed to. But for someone as young as I am, not very many have been exposed to so much. The one thing about running a commercial farm was obviously to understand how the workers help you out in terms of getting the business to succeed. For me, it was an important one to understand this, because I didn't have a background of farming. So understanding how my workers worked was what actually taught me to understand how important it was to get them motivated and to understand the business on a business level and not just as a worker level. So getting them to understand the financials and what their job affected the business, helped me to also understand how I could be of value to the business. So after a few years in the farm, I actually then got the opportunity to understand how the agricultural sector worked. It wasn't just about farming. We have to understand the value chain and how it is that you make money. As my father started to take me to business meetings that were outside the farm, only then did I get to understand the agricultural sector as a whole. And then I realized the many opportunities that South African agriculture actually offered to a young person like myself. At some point, I have been able to sit in front of ministers at meetings to present our ideas, sit in front of big commercial farmers, premiers, and even the head of state. I've been able to travel the world with the DTI, which is organized by the Department of Trade and Industry, which assists us farmers and small businesses to access export markets. I also attended a program in Oklahoma State University, which was for youth in agriculture who are interested in entrepreneurial businesses. I was also selected as into the presidential youth group, which focused in assisting the government to find effective ways to communicate and target the youth. And in 2015, I was appointed as one of the National Executive Council members for African Farmers Association as the youth representative. So it seems as though there was a lot of opportunities. But what made it even more interesting is as I started going to conferences, I started to meet other different farmers, small farmers, big farmers. But what was more intriguing was the youth farmers. There were a lot of youth already in this industry. And if we actually think about it, all the agricultural communities always talking about how do we get youth into agriculture? Well, it will be a bit hard for us to do so if we're not seeing any youth already in agriculture succeeding. So the idea was that we need to find ways to ensure that those who have chosen agriculture already, those that are on farms, needs to be seen to be succeeding. And only then can we ask others outside the industry to take up agriculture as a career of choice. With this in mind, I then realized that because I actually did not have a path to come into agriculture myself, I landed up here by accident. And this should not how it should happen, especially when we're trying to target food security as a main concern. I got together with a friend of mine, and we decided to put together our business, which is called GrowShoot. GrowShoot is focused in collaborating with established partners in the industry, in the agricultural industry, in order to create ecosystems for youth farmers to succeed. It's important to develop these business models so that we can provide income streams for youth that are already on farms. We realize that although these youth farmers that are already situated on farms with their families, they're working hard, they're dedicated. But the issue is they do not actually get an income from their household. And we can understand why, because the ecosystem at the moment for smallholder farmer isn't sufficient enough for them to be able to have a regular, sturdy inflow of cash into the business. So it's important to make sure that we empower the youth that are on the farms and give them their own businesses that they can run. So just to give you an idea of what GrowShoot is, our industry in South Africa, the agricultural industry, is already well established, well organized. But we find that those that are new in the industry find it much harder to actually plug in and actually be part of the success that already is created. So what we have been trying to do is, we as GrowShoot, we want to put together the systems ourselves. We have come together to find the market. If you can see, the logo that I've got there is actually a rabbit farming business, which can provide rabbits to us. And they also will come with the technical skills, which is obviously important to be able to provide the right quality of rabbits. Exposure to the market is important so that people can really understand that we are here and we actually have access to farmers and also the work that we're doing. Access to land is one of the things that we have worked with, and we've partnered up with our farm, which is Makolobane Farmers Enterprises, where our main projects will be taking part to put together a pilot of this nature. We also want to make sure that we share inputs and infrastructure and logistic costs among all the farmers that we put together in this system. And then what's also important is to make sure that we have a proper business that we put together. Hence, we have partnered up with A.T. Kearney, who provided management consulting services when we're putting the business together, and Norton Rose, who provides legal advice on a pro bono basis. But what's interesting right now is that we're at a part where we're looking for funding. Without the funding, none of these can actually, the business cannot take up. And we found that there's the usual places to go for funding. There's banks, there's financiers who assist that assist agricultural businesses, then there's government departments. But we realize that they're quite inefficient in how they do things. It's not so easy for us, especially youth who are starting new things, to be able to actually access finance. And so as my background is finance, this is very important for me, and I need to make sure that I ensure that this actually works. And the one element that we need to focus on is with regards to investment from private individuals. How do we tap into that part of the market? Because people are forever trying to put money away, to invest money in certain places. And it'll be for me it'll be very good for us if we could target such types of investments. And because we're youth, we need to come up with different ways and different models. And across the world, the three main funding sources that are coming up with regards to crowdfunding, angel investors, as well as venture capital. They're not very big in South Africa, and I believe that is a very untapped market that we can grow in South Africa. And my challenge to myself, and then I will put it out to the rest of the other youth, is to provide these platforms. But the best way to do that is to be able to provide the information to the constituencies in this arena. Wherever I travel, not very many people actually understand how agriculture works. All they know is the farm. But as we all know, there's so much more extensive value chain that goes along there. And that means the investment is actually, you're able to put your money in very many different ways in the agriculture sector. And it is up to me to ensure that some part of our country is able to understand how valuable food security is for all of us, so that we can all be part of this. And this is how we include those that are outside the industry to participate in one way or another. So that's where I ended. And I actually just wanted to put that challenge out to me, that will be my work. And in the next, maybe when the next GCARD conference comes, I'll be able to report how I actually was able to put together close the gap between those outside agriculture and those inside agriculture to be able to assist in food security in the long run. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Another round of applause to our young people. This has been really exciting, really humbling and exciting. If there is one thing we all need to go away with, is that this whole thing about the youth being leaders of tomorrow is dead. The youth are leaders of now. And if we don't capitalize on that, we are doing a disservice to our societies. I think we really need to, couple how we can work together with the youth in all, at all levels, in all types of, situations. We've seen two excellent, confident, insightful deliveries. We should really get all of us excited. Unfortunately, we don't have time. We would have liked to tease them a little bit more, but please continue to interact with the youth as you go on. One point I'd like to highlight from what was just said is the difference between rural youth and urban youth. I have seen a lot of initiatives that are focusing on urban youth, which are doing great. It's like, what can you do, to help people to establish businesses and value chains? That is great. It's part of the issue. But we shouldn't forget that down in the rurals, there are youth who have to find space to be able to earn their living in such a way that they are also contributing to society. And I'd like us to put the two, it's all two wings of the bird, that we make sure that they are all helping to move us forward. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like us to appreciate all the speakers from the very beginning, the panelists, and two exciting young presenters. Let's appreciate them for the final time as we move on to have our coffee. So we're going now for the coffee break. And please make sure that we are into our various thematic sessions. As you must know by now, there are 5 parallel sessions which have been constructed on the basis of the themes, the 5 themes. And these sessions are there. They're going to run through the entire rest of this conference. And feel free to be able to switch from one to the other, because all the titles are indicated in your program. So with that, thank you very much, and I declare this session closed. Thank you.